I'm thrilled to introduce our own Rudy Grahn, who has recently joined us just in the last couple of months as our Global Attribution and Measurement Lead. You can check out his LinkedIn profile, most recently from the great agency holding company Publicis. And if you scroll way down on his and my LinkedIn, you'll see that we did some early good work in the space of behavioral targeting way back in the relative Stone Ages. And Rudy's going to be talking to the great Tim Wu from fantastic media and creative agency RPA. With that, we'll toss to Rudy and Tim. Please take it away, gentlemen.
Appreciate it, Matt, and good to see you, Tim. Thanks for everybody attending. I know we're going to make some time at the end for your questions as well. I definitely want to throw your questions in the mix because they're going to Tim, and I think you're going to find that's the right place for them. We've had a chance to check. I expect good things here. So, Tim, let's start a little bit with your remit. Let's start a little bit and talk about your role. You're a data professional. As my background is some agency analytics work too, the role of the data professional and the role of the data product within agencies is very rapidly evolving. You used to see more sort of narrow titles like analytics or reporting, and your remit is a little wider than that. You are someone who is really working in a multidisciplinary role that rolls up not just analytics, but things like measurement strategy, things like operations. There's quite a bit under your remit. I would ask you to start talking a little bit about how you curated those different roles to ladder up into the market intelligence sphere that you oversee.
Sure, Rudy. Just want to first off say thank you very much for having me, Grahn Innovators, and thank you, Rudy and Prohaska Consulting for this this discussion. So one day my boss came to me and said, "Tim, you are now responsible for these teams," and I told him, "Sure." That was it. No, I'm just kidding. What our goal of this team is really to create connections between brands and their respective customers. And that all starts with having a holistic framework centered around having the ability to learn, track, and measure the efficacy of our advertising campaigns, which is really the genesis of the marketing intelligence group. So we have, you mentioned it yourself, we have audience intelligence that is really at the core of looking at signals and learning from people and trying to develop and analyze potential target audiences. Then we have the research analytics and insights team that's sole goal is to report on the success and failures of who we're marketing to. And that's only possible through tracking and tagging and having the right setup, which is why the ad operations team is also part of this intelligence group. And then finally, we have a media research arm that is responsible for keeping us up to date with the ever-changing landscape. As you know, it evolves overnight. So to stay in contact with all of the various tech and research partners so that we have a close eye on the latest in tools and services that are out there.
So to expand on this a little bit, when I was a young nerd down at the end of the hall working hard over a hot spreadsheet, I didn't have a lot of contact with what I'll call the outside world within the agency, right? It was generate a deliverable and sort of throw it over the wall. That has really, really changed. And there seems to be not just this sort of multidisciplinary approach that you have within your organization, but I want to talk a little bit about the sort of connective tissue that's required to make these products successful, to make the measurement products successful. How do you within your organization work with disciplines that may not be primarily data products? So I'll just pick media activation teams or strategy activation teams. In the old days, the silos were a little more firm, and now that data is so front and center for everybody else, there's a lot more cooks in the kitchen. Yeah. How do you manage all the cooks in the kitchen, and what types of people are you finding thrive in working in this multidisciplinary environment? How are you finding people that can translate the sort of nerdy end of data science to folks who might be great at relationship management or people who might be more in the media negotiation space? How do you make that dynamic work?
I'll start with that question, which is really the people on this team, the collective team, the market intelligence group, they all have common characteristics. They're all analytical, they're all passionate individuals, they're innovators, they're great communicators. So that's foundational to everything we do, is to be able to communicate effectively anything you're trying to sell, whether it's, you know, some insights around audiences, it's some insights around the campaign's efficacy, whatever it is you're selling, and you have to be able to communicate effectively. And then on top of that, you have to be a great collaborator. You know, like you said, these teams are central to everything we do from a media activation standpoint. So as much as it is important to surface these insights for our external stakeholders, our clients, they have many internal stakeholders, from media strategy, media activation, investment, account, creative. So it's important for them to be able to collaborate and get along with all of their fellow colleagues. And one way to do that is, you're right, data is front and center now. Not everyone needs to code or be able to analyze complex data sets. So one thing that we typically do is we create visualizations to help surface the things that are important and make it a lot more digestible for people outside of our discipline.
I mean, we're in a tough hiring environment for everybody's job these days, but the data professional, the measurement professional in particular, I will want to cover a little bit about how you're adapting to a tough hiring environment, but has the data moving front and center changed the way that you go looking for, let's just pick on data scientists here first. 10 years ago, I would be willing to bet most organizations weren't screening their data scientists for their client presentation skills on the first interview, right? That might be changing. Can you talk a little bit about how this has changed the sort of mix of skills that you're looking for, even in trades like data science, which are actually pretty settled science from a job qualification point of view? How are you balancing those things? What have you had to change, if anything?
Yeah, it's interesting, Rudy. I think one thing that we've changed is there's certain technical skills requirements, you know, certain programming language that we expect out of our analysts. And, you know, a lot of universities, a lot of institutions now are having this be something that you can proactively gain skills, acquire skills. You know, for example, a lot of universities have business analytics master's degrees. So a lot of people are going back to school to gain these skill sets, and that will certainly be invaluable in to transform data, to pull data in the environment that we're headed, where there's going to be a lot more responsibilities around data gathering, collection, and pulling and formatting, et cetera. So part of it is the technical aspects of what we're looking for, but I also want to just go back to what I started with, which is the communication, you know, because I think the skill sets are invaluable, but we also want someone that can communicate effectively with our clients and with our internal stakeholders. That's, I would say, equally important to a person's skill sets than just the hard skills alone.
Right. Well, and the number of client-facing data professionals, I think, is going up in every organization. And maybe we can switch and talk a little bit about the client-facing data product in the measurement and attribution space in particular. An agency, I know lots of agencies are positioning themselves as, you know, they do everything. They're Swiss Army knives. But fundamentally, agencies are still a service business. You know, at the end of the day, you're still going to have to meet client expectations. It's another way of just saying you're going to have to do what the client wants. And from a measurement point of view, not every client is going to want, you know, total open kimono, totally, open, having all the secrets reported on a regular basis. So culturally speaking, how are you managing your data product, your measurement product specifically, into a client org? The same problems that you might have managing multidisciplinary practices on the agency side, I'm guessing you're going to have plenty of clients where managing into a multidisciplinary approach that you didn't curate presents some unique challenges. How are you balancing giving the client what they want and demand and giving them what you think you need and making that product indispensable to them?
Yeah, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I think one thing that I've advocated across all of our disciplines is creating relationships with our clients and building that trust and confidence in what we have to offer. And once that's established, it's a lot there. What I find is that they're a lot more receptive to what we have to share with them. And so that is paramount, is really gaining an understanding of the client's needs and their business objectives, so that we can provide the everything that they need, but then add on to that. So once we're able to satisfy, I would say, check the box on the things that they're asking for, they're then a lot more receptive to the other things that we have to offer. And sometimes, yeah, you're right, we have to change their mindsets into looking at other things, considering other things. Maybe our marketing mix model has a recommendation that counters what they've done in the past. So it's our what we need to do, though, is sell through in this idea of changing their business strategy in an effort to maximize the return on investment. But all of that conversation is aided or is amplified or is benefits from gaining trust and building that confidence in that relationship that I spoke to earlier with the clients.
Right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here to talk about some nuts and bolts in measurement. And I have been on the buy side for quite a while, and the buy side, sort of trashing the measurement product of the sell side is sort of old hat and old sport. One of the frequent gripes that you hear is why should we let the publishers grade their own homework, for example? But to some extent, aren't agencies doing the exact same thing? I mean, the agencies are the ones saying, give us this amount of money and you'll get this amount of things back, and we'll let you know later whether or not you really got those things. Managing the actual measurement and getting to a place where you have an independent voice for getting to the truth is a process that is a very delicate one. I'm wondering what your approach is at your shop and what you think good general principles are there too. Is how much of grading the own homework are you willing to tolerate, and how much are you really depending on that sort of third-party auditor function to get that data product in front of a client?
I love this question. And really, we operate as Switzerland. We are Switzerland. We're a third-party bank. That's how we analyze and provide recommendations. We have really no skin in the game, which is why we can come and present the findings without any biases. And I think oftentimes the difference between an agency and publishers are publishers' analytical teams. Many of them, they're all part of this same unified team where they, there's a commission structure, so it's in their best interest to promote the products and services of that particular publisher. But really, from at least from an RPA perspective, our analytics team, our measurement team, we have no skin in the game, so we're able to just provide our point of view without any biases. So it's been tremendous.
Right. So if you're counseling a client, you're helping them through an MTA, an MMM, some sort of large scale measurement product. Can you talk a little bit about your thinking or your approach in terms of guiding a client through those decisions of, do you build the model yourself? Do you rent models from somewhere else? I mean, this is the build, buy, or rent discussion, particularly in terms of MTA. How do you feel about clients building their own models versus maybe going to a third-party vendor, particularly when it comes to MTA, or is there not one specific answer?
Yeah, I don't think there's a one specific answer. It's really depends. There are several situations or dependencies on what that decision. But I think just in general, a lot of the analytical partners that specialize at their core competency is building these models. Oftentimes, they provide a very sound solution. They have the relationships across the different technology partners. So I would say more often than not, that's a better avenue to go down versus trying to build your own, which becomes very expensive, very timely. You have a lot of different disparate data sources that you have to combine and put into place. But a lot of the third-party partners already have the integrations in place. They already have that experience. So, but again, going back to what I said earlier, it really depends on a client basis. If you have that the team to support and build a model internally, it could be very fruitful. From our experience, though, I think really working with these third-party partners tends to be the quicker turnaround, especially in the environment that we're in, where you need to make decisions quickly.
Right. I don't think this is a particularly hot take, but you never know. So a lot of these deployments, you mentioned the time consumption and the cost. The technology is advancing, the modeling is getting better, but I'm not sure that the high number of failed deployments in this space are necessarily because the technology wasn't ready. I think a lot of these failures come from organizations that aren't ready. I mean, marketing organizations, for example, that have no dedicated data engineering resources are expected to manage this gigantic, ETL process. Wondering if you can help me understand, just from your point of view and the RPA point of view, where the real barriers here on getting to a successful MTA deployment. Is it the math? Is it the modeling? Or is it more likely to be organizational issues? MTA declares winners and losers. And there are channels that look great when you're not doing MTA. And the minute you turn MTA on, it's like telling them their kids are ugly, right? So you have this dichotomy here where is it really the modeling and the technology that's making it hard, or is it getting everybody on the same page and pulling the rope in the same direction?
Yeah, fortunately, we work with clients that are aware of the challenges that in the buy-in that's necessary across different departments for deploying a MTA model. But I know many organizations struggle with this, and they have silos and barriers that prevent them from maximizing the capabilities of an MTA model. So going back to your question, I do think there are organizational challenges that are at the forefront that restrict and limit, the potential of these models. The models themselves, the science behind it, the algorithms, they're all better than just, basic arithmetic or last click, last touch, that Matt spoke to. Yeah. So they're definitely a better, smarter way of making decisions. It's really the culture of these organizations needs to change. And, maybe one way to go about and get buy-in across the organization is to have a team devoted to this. You almost need a team dedicated to get the various stakeholders to participate in a model, in a MTA model or marketing mix model that oftentimes requires it's a multidisciplinary approach to make sure that it's as successful as it needs to be.
I mean, the last click, last touch model, I'm in 100% agreement with Matt on this one, but let's not kid ourselves. It's also the easiest thing, to measure. It's glamorized counting, to some degree. Yeah. Between this sort of primitive last click, last touch model and these sort of high-end MTA models, ideally with some sort of integration with your MMM, are there any sort of intermediate steps that you like to consider? Are you into things like incrementality testing? Have you seen any other types of what we'll call multi-channel data sets that are scored for incrementality that you like that aren't a full-blown MTA deployment? Are these a good half step on your way to the full show?
Absolutely. I think incrementality testing has been proven and has worked successfully, especially in the world of data privacy, where we can't rely on volume metrics anymore, and you have to go after more model data, more experimental design testing and things like that. So incrementality measurement is absolutely key. Is a key measurement practice, especially in the stage that we're in, where it's very nebulous, very gray. I mean, we're kind of at this crossroads of moving toward this cookieless environment. A lot of the modeling solutions, we talk about MMM, MTA, incrementality, these are all now getting elevated and are more important during this time.
Well, you mentioned it's time in a time of transition, and that's a good reason to start talking about identity explicitly, because if that's the elephant in the room here, a lot of MTA and a lot of measurement, particularly the big measurement deployments, are really deduplicating log files down to a user ID and then sequencing whatever records that you have and then scoring them via one methodology or another. The ability to deduplicate a huge percentage of your buy down to like an impression event record is going away for lots and lots of people. Is this really just a black and white issue that if you're not able to do this sort of traditional sequencing of event records that you're out of luck? Or are there some approaches in between that as these IDs go away and as the number of impressions that you have raw data for go away, are there any sort of probabilistic solutions that you like? Are there any modeled solutions you like that help transition you from this sort of, these massive observational data sets being the only fuel for the model and instead moving towards a more multidisciplinary data set?
Yeah, I just want to pause right there and say, like, I don't want you guys to think I didn't get dressed up for this meeting. I actually did. So just real quick, this shirt here, Operation Ivy. Have you heard of this band, by the way, Rudy?
I mean, you're a Southern California guy, right? Like, I assume they just issue those the old punk rock T-shirts to you when you graduate high school.
No, I wish they did though. This is a punk rock band back from the late '80s. Operation Ivy. They were, very influential, and I've been a fan of them for many years. And I've always wanted to, I wear band t-shirts all the time. And I went to the record label site, always looking to see if they have Op Ivy t-shirts available, and they never did. But thanks to personalized advertising, the minute the shirt came available, I was getting hit up left and right to, hey, Tim, you've come to our site 100 times, you were never successful in getting what you wanted. Here's the shirt that you wanted. So thanks to personalized advertising, I was able to get this shirt. And I just wanted to throw that as a small anecdote to really promote personalized advertising. Going back to your question though, I think in terms of being able to track behavioral signals, use probabilistic modeling, sure. Right now we're at an age of innovation, in testing and learning, we have to try all avenues and explore all avenues. So I'm not going to be the one to say like, no, don't use probabilistic modeling. Deterministic's better, sure. But at this point, you have nothing to lose because there's so much evolution to how we're going to be tracking and measuring in the future. There's a lot of solutions coming out in place. There's no right answer on how to solve anything right now. So we're taking an ensemble solution approach and we're trying to maximize our return and test different things. And you'll learn along the way. You'll learn that maybe probabilistic modeling doesn't work in your vertical, or maybe this partner that had this ID resolution capability didn't scale. So these are the things that you have to, roll up your sleeves, get dirty and do. Otherwise, you're gonna be sitting on the sidelines just waiting for that unicorn that may never appear.
Right. Some of the early contenders for unicorn in a past life I've done a little testing with, and as I understand you've done a little testing too. Let's talk about a little bit about how some of these new data sets are coming to bear and see whether or not we can find a way to fit them into the MTA paradigm. We'll start a little bit with the ad targeting that's, we'll call it ID free here. It's a little bit of an oversimplification to say ID free, but we'll say contextual, for example, targeting, going from, where you're making your bids based on the traits the user has to switching to bids that are being made based on the context, the content environment that the ad itself sits in. Can you talk a little bit about any experimentation you've done with contextual targeting, and where do you see this sort of fitting into an ecosystem that really is still designed to run on user traits and audience data? How do you reduce these sort of non-audience data sets into a paradigm that's basically built to run on audience data?
Yeah, with contextual, you're still going to benefit from having a closer connection with the actual individual, where there is a relationship with the content that they're consuming and the advertisements in that space. So you're still going to benefit from that, regardless of having that one-to-one connection of identifying who that audience is. So it is still a somewhat of a viable solution. But at the end of the day, one thing that we're starting to look at more in depth with the audience intelligence team that we have is we're looking at capturing behavioral signals passively through many partners that we work with. And we're still able to get a better understanding of what a person's makeup is and be able to target them and create lookalikes and whatnot. So that's also another option that we've been exploring. So we may lose the ability to have one-to-one connections for now. I do feel though that what we're not promoting right now as an industry is the value exchange between potential customer and brands as well as we should. It's so easy for you to take your iPhone out and just opt out, right? It's so easy to opt out, especially with Apple and their negative perception of personalization, through the commercials that they've been deploying. I'm an Apple guy, so no disrespect, but I just don't feel that they're doing a disservice for personalized advertising. And I still feel like that we as a from a marketing standpoint need to really create a value exchange, because then we can get more people to opt in and really see the advantages of a personalized world. Right now, I don't think they do really understand that. And that's why we're in this stage where we can't target people one-to-one.
Yeah, I mean, outreach from the ad buying community to the ad consuming community is a bit of a labyrinth and a little bit indirect, and it's not always friendly. But I mean, do you think the average consumer understands that, an advertiser who cannot deduplicate ad delivery down to a device or even a household is going to be unable to do anything that really is effective in terms of frequency capping? Is there a halfway there, for example? If the consumer understood that, if you're going to paint over the number on the address number on your mailbox, and I don't necessarily know who's there, I'm going to send it to everybody, right? And I'll send it until I get enough responses back. How do we have outreach directly? It's not our strong suit, going, the buy side directly to the consumer to discuss these issues. How do we have a discussion with the consumer about the trade-off in value here, especially if the consumer is not necessarily going to jump into the subscription model at large?
That's a great question, and that's something that deserves further exploration. I think people respond to incentives, so there needs to be some sort of incentive for them to want to opt in. I don't think people think about frequency like you and I do. People just see the ads and they keep reappearing. So, even before data privacy became at the forefront, call it 5-6 years ago, it was a wild west, and people were using data, and companies were using data in all sorts of different variations. And what's good though is that with data privacy now front and center, it requires companies, organizations, brands to be more responsible of how their data is being used, as it's all going back to the user's consent. Now we just need to be able to explain to these people, or explain to us, even myself, like what benefits are they going to get from the personalized advertising. So value exchange is important. It's getting left. I feel like that's just getting it's getting shelved right now, and we as an industry are just looking for solutions, of how to combat this. But let's get those let's get those counts up. Let's get more people to say, I will opt in.
Right.
And one way to do that is maybe through zero-party data. Maybe we are headed to a place where, hey, if I created a profile and I said, marketers, please advertise more band shirts to me. Please advertise hockey. I'm a big hockey fan. All the things that I like, maybe all of the interests I have, maybe I can proactively surface that to advertisers, and that way they know how to communicate to me. And maybe that's the way of the future of how we can connect with potential consumers.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the oldest cliches in our business is that people don't look at advertising, they look at what interests them. And sometimes that happens to be advertising, right? So, if you ask a consumer, does advertising work on you? They say, oh, no, of course not. But if you ask them, does it work on other people? They say, oh, yes, of course it does. For the other people, it's advertising, and to the user who likes it, it's content. Have you seen any places where the move towards zero-party data or that which is freely volunteered by the consumer, are you able to bring that stuff to market at scale yet, or do you still think of that as a test and learn tactic?
Yeah, definitely a test and learn, because I don't think people are ready to just, freely give up information, especially with data privacy being such a hot topic right now. But I do feel, companies, organizations, clients of ours are starting to really examine the use of first-party data. And with that can come zero-party data, and deepening that connection with their customers. So it's definitely a test and learn. And I don't have the right answer to how we get more people to feel comfortable with sharing that type of information or kind of making that the norm. But certainly if user consent is really what we're after, and we can it's just about encouraging them to participate in this and really honing in on the key benefits that they're going to get out of it, whether it's avoiding subscriptions, maybe it's offers or particular products and services that are exclusive, whatever it is, give them something to react to. And I feel that most brands will get a positive return from that.
So I want to be respectful of time. I think we're about a little over 30 minutes in, and I know we have some questions in the chat. I definitely want to throw it open to other questions. We do have some things that we'll get into here together, and there are already some questions in the chat that I am going to go into here in a little bit. In fact, I'm going to maybe go back a little bit while we see what we get in terms of questions from the audience. Can we talk a little bit, going back to the idea of independence and measurement, and talk a little bit about RPA specifically and what the advantages are for clients, to work with an independent agency? And I think, the argument for working with the holding companies, those are things that I think a lot of people instinctively understand. The scale is fantastic. The group buying power is fantastic, but, it may not be fantastic in every circumstance for every client. Could you talk a little bit for the client who's thinking about re-engineering their entire stack in the years to come? They're rethinking everything. What are they going to in-house? What are they going to farm out? What are they going to pay other people to do? What is the value proposition for the independent agency in there? And what types of clients do you see really thriving with independent agencies?
Yeah, Rudy, that's another good question. With at RPA, we really pride ourselves on servicing our clients or always servicing our clients by putting their best interests, taking their best interests and putting that at the forefront in everything we do. So what I mean by that is we're not held to a bottom line figure that most holding companies or agencies that are part of holding companies are, where they are required to promote their products and services, to reach a bottom line figure. We do everything in the best interest of our clients. So we make recommendations for third-party solutions if it's the best product or service for them. And we're a people-first agency, and what that really means is that clients will benefit from working with RPA, partnering with RPA, and getting an intimacy with an agency that always takes their best interest in mind. And I think that intimacy, as there are clients looking for that partnership and really just an extension of their team, that's what they're going to get when you work with an independent agency. And sometimes not all holding companies suffer from this, or agencies that are part of holding companies suffer from this, but I do feel like that lack, they're at such high scale that intimacy sometimes gets lost, when independent agencies have the ability to to be a lot more in close contact with their day-to-day operations.
Right. I mean, in our business, the opposite of that intimacy is going to be automation. And I'm wondering whether or not y'all have the automation bug yet. I mean, just in defense of the big holding companies, and then that's my provenance, so probably a little biased in their favor here. Doing mass scale automation of the behind the scenes stuff is going to scale very well for them. And to be able to extend that to automating processes for clients who may just want to in-house part of it and just say, you can in-house it, we'll sell you algorithms, or we'll sell you the automated part. One of the advantages to an independent agency is going to be that high touch, that high customer service. Is there any disadvantage on automation, or is that on your radar in a big way?
Oh, it's definitely on our radar. I think oftentimes they say the percent of time spent, between ETL, data formatting and whatnot versus actual producing insights and recommendations, it's like a 70-30 split. We wanted to reverse that with automation. So take care of all of the formatting, cleansing, integrity, all that stuff up front, so we can spend more time on the insights, the recommendations, because that's what our clients care about. At the end of the day, they don't ever ask us how long did it take you to format this data. That's trivial to them. They want insights, they want recommendations, they want optimization. So having that pendulum swing so they can focus more on that, that's what automation does.
So I'm going to dip into the question bag from our attendees, and thank you, Bruce, for this one, a very good one. Why aren't more brands and campaigns leveraging ad creative opportunities, personalization of creative, interactive creative, enhanced video creative? I'm guessing DCO in one form or another too, bringing that data to bear in an automated way. Why hasn't the adoption in the creative space, on the data space, been as robust across the board as it seems to be in the bidding and buying process?
I think it's some of that goes back to just organizationally. I think there's a fear of costs, of time it takes to implement. I think there's also been challenges with just the recommendation engines working properly, for some of these partners. But it's funny that this question comes up now, because I've been exploring dynamic creative optimization at length recently, and a lot of the partners have made huge enhancements in getting it right, and certainly working with all of the ID specialists in the space to have an ID graph, a footprint, so that they can get sequential messaging right, things like that. I think it's just a lot of the unknown is maybe it's legitimate, maybe it's not, but back to what I said earlier, we are in this state of innovation. So most organizations, I think, will truly benefit from tapping into these types of solutions.
Yeah, and not to pick on anybody in particular, but there are plenty of websites. If you go look at the homepage, there's probably 20 different personalization engines on there, personalizing one element of either the experience or the page. Of course, none of them talk to each other, and could all just easily be making recommendations that confound the other recommendations being made by the other, whatever, 100 personalization vendors in the site. We're going to take a little step back here. Thank you, Gabby, for your question. Definitely want to hear from Tim on this one too. We're going to go back to a little bit finding a win-win between the marketer and the consumer. The advertiser is the great benefactor for many content creators, right? Like, they're footing the bill for these things. There is value generated by the ad buyer. And I think the fact that consumers don't run at subscriptions quite as much as maybe would have been anticipated reflects that to some degree. What Gabby is asking is, what role do you think the marketer themselves has to play in terms of educating the consumer about this? Is this some industry trade organization we're going to hand it to? Or is this an extension of the brand? Is the brand supposed to just go directly? Talk about zero-party data, the consumer willing to have a dialogue or exchange with a brand. Is it as simple as that? Is it as simple as the marketer reaching out and asking? What role does the marketer play in educating the consumer?
Yeah, I think the marketer is really responsible for this, to help educate the potential customers of back to what I said earlier, the value exchange, and as many clients of ours even consider looking at ways to create authentications on their website, logins, for example. The big question becomes, what value does a non-customer get to log in, benefit from logging into this website? Somehow the brands, marketers need to figure out ways, creative ways that show that these potential customers can benefit from, personalization or what have you. And right now, I just don't think that that's being considered by many. Where again, running to solutions of a post-cookieless world, what are we going to do? We need to go back to just emphasize the value that people will get from personalization. In fact, there was Accenture ran a survey, and 91% of people said that they would shop at a brand that utilizes personalization. So Rudy, that goes back to what you said earlier. Most people, I think subconsciously are benefiting from personalization. They just don't fully understand, and part of that is because of the negative perception of what data privacy is, and at least what's being surfaced in the media. But sorry, I'm getting long-winded, but going back to Gabby's question, it really is, I feel it should be the responsibility of the brand marketers to really create that value exchange.
To duck into the chat here for a quick question from Karen. This is cutting edge stuff here, wanting to know RPA's point of view on the emerging discussion on an alternative TV currency, or the development of a more holistic way of measuring the delivery of video for the advertiser. Have you come to any conclusions on that? Have you reached a place where you have a strong POV that you want the market to go, or are you still taking it in and trying to figure out on a client by client basis where the recommendation is?
Yeah, there's no definitive. We're still researching this topic, but that's where our media research team is concentrating their efforts on, because it is important, this holistic currency. We don't necessarily have a strong point of view either way. It's really just seeing how what shakes out of it. And I think going forward, though, everyone wants this holistic currency. I think for years now we've been looking at ways that we can fully understand the consumer journey, and this is certainly a step in the right direction. Right.
All right. I promised you I was going to ask this one. Hope that it doesn't feel like I'm putting you on the spot. Can you give us a little? I'm looking for a little a tip here. Are there any vendors out there that you really like, that you aren't hearing people talk about, and you're willing to part with? Who out there is doing stuff that interests you and you don't think they're getting enough love?
Measured, an incrementality measurement partner. They are certainly pioneers in that space in terms of incrementality testing and measurement. Another company that we've been talking to is Distillery. They do a lot of audience targeting. They have they have a map of the internet where they're able to capture over 200 million signals of individuals. And this is without cookies or IDs. So they're certainly a partner that's very interesting. Just to name a couple. There's many out there, not to single anybody out, but these partners come to mind.
Appreciate that. Matt, are you going to let me wear Van Halen t-shirts to work?
I think that falls under company dress code policy quite comfortably, of course.
I figured as much.
And I'm sorry, did I miss the memo? My background, I obviously don't have the same theme background as you guys, so I apologize for that.
Your t-shirt is your background. That works. IRL. Very, very nice. I was busy getting my Op Ivy playlist going on Spotify while you guys were talking. So Rudy, a big thank you. Tim, thanks for showing me once again how far away I am from being cool on the music scene, and for helping all of us get a little bit more insights on what life is really like at a great agency. Thank you both, gentlemen.